Okay, so right now, after we talked about back talk, we would like to talk about MSI. And MSI stands for musculoskeletal injuries. So it's slightly different from back talk that we presented in our previous unit. In that MSI, as soon as you hear the terms such as
carpal tunnel or tendonitis,
then right away you think of MSI. So it's an injury to soft tissues of your body.
and these injuries happen because of certain things, of certain way of doing things. And so it's a subject that you see time loss quite a bit. Many years ago, a war story for you, I was off for a few months because I had tendonitis in one of my hands. I'm right-handed, and I found myself wrenching, very repetitive. We were building machines, and then I started getting pains, sharp pains in my hands, and then coming, kind of radiating to my wrist. And so what happened, as a natural reaction, I compensated by using my left hand. And so as I started using my left hand and my right hand, it ended up getting really bad, as I ended up with tendonitis in my left hand. So I was off for a few months, and my treatment at the time, this happened probably in the early 90s, by the way. My treatment at the time was heat and cold, and I had to go to physiotherapy, and they would have like hot wax, Andre, and they would make me dip my hand in hot wax all the way up to almost my elbow. And because it ended up being both hands, I would go in and I would get both of my hands hot wax, hot enough that you can handle. And then they would wrap it, and then the treatment began. So it was quite interesting. It was heat and cold that was what I was doing.
No wonder you have no hair on your forearms, right? So it looks good. But something Eric mentioned in his war story, he mentioned a repetitive. So MSI is a repetitive injury, or you're doing something repetitive because, as a mechanic myself as well as Eric, we are constantly turning wrenches, ratchets, right? We're doing a repetitive motion to our hands, right? So you need to be aware that as a millwright, you might end up with tendonitis. I've got tendonitis in my right hand as well, and I have to be constantly aware because it causes internal pains to my hands.
Yeah, and then it happens when you're having like hard objects kind of pinching against you, and also doing repetitively, right? You get a lot of painters get to do this because of the painting motion.
But even like if you think of pulling like a floor jack, right? So you've got all that weight and you're pulling it, and if you're pulling enough all the time, so that causes it could cause tendonitis as well, right?
So the next thing is in your booklet, which you have on the required reading, talks about the musculoskeletal injuries. In your booklet, you're going to have certain important terms that you want to remember. So you got a sign and you got a symptom. A sign is what you see. So when you're driving, you see signs, right? So you can you can physically see the sign, and a symptom is what you can't see. So if you come to me and tell me I have a little small cut in my hand, I can see blood, right? So that's a sign of you bleeding. But if you come to me and tell me, Eric, I have a headache, right? So, oh, I can't see through your head. I don't know what it is. So that would be considered a symptom. So a sign is what you see. A symptom is what you don't see. So one of the signs would for tendonitis or for any kind of injury like that, Andre, would be?
Well, it could be redness, right? It could be swelling,
Yeah.
right? Difficulties moving a particular part of your body. So those could be the signs, right?
A sign. And a symptom would be something that I will tell you. So my symptoms on my injuries were pain, internal pain, right? So I feel pain, I feel numbness, I feel tingling, and those would be your symptoms.
And it's good to be aware of those two things because it's something preventable, right? And it's good to be aware ahead so you can prevent those from happening.
So the primary risk factors when we're talking MSI are?
The force, repetition, work posture, and local contact stress.
Local contact stress would be like we give you the example of the wrenching, right? When you're using pliers, when you're cutting and doing things like that, right? When it comes to force.
Well, it could be a grip force as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's trying to grip, maybe you bought cheap pliers and it's very hard to grip because the handles are too small. So it could be one of them. Gripping on, I mentioned pulling a trolley. So pulling a floor jack with a load on it. So that's the grip force. And
there's local contact as you pull. Now, of course, we want to make sure that it is ideal. So ideally, you shouldn't be pulling. You should be pushing.
That's right.
Right? And again, when it comes to grip, Andre mentioned the grip. Depending on the type of grip that you have, if you grip with your fingers like this and you are applying forces to it, you are risking more than if you grab it with your whole hand.
Full hand,
right?
That's right.
And this is just a quick example, but when you're out in the field, you'll find many different things that you run into, such as you're working in a sawmill and you're doing flipping pieces of wood or whatever. It's kind of this repetitive thing that you do, right? We talked about work posture earlier on the subject before, which was back talk. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Ergonomics comes into play here again. So trying to make the work area better for you, better so that anatomically works for you.
Yeah. Avoid awkward positioning yourself, awkward work ethics, I guess, and stuff like that.
Right now, if you're nowadays, it's a lot better. A lot of the stuff is ergonomically correct, which even your keyboard and the computer, you can have keyboards that are kind of rounded. You have gel wrist supports and things like that if you work in the office, if you're doing stuff like that. That's basically, do you have anything to add on this, Andre?
Well, I have a short war story as well. As a millwright, I was involved in designing workstations for people who were assembling equipment, electrical equipment, and we had to figure out the height they had to be standing at, the angle they had to lean over to see in the box, and we had to design equipment. So it was like equipment that would lift these electrical cabinets at the height acceptable to the person to avoid MSI as well as back injuries.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.